A guten Erev Shabbos. Sometimes the way ahead of us is clear. It's an open path, a clear direction, a journey with few obstacles. The way forward seems to open up magically before us without fear of harm or distraction. Other times, the way ahead seems contentious, painful, fraught with anxiety. The journey ahead can seem unclear, confusing, and overly challenging. The straightforward path has become lost, and we become embittered. Both of these possibilities appear in our parsha this week, Beshallach, also known as Beshallach Shira, the Song of Song, the Song at the Sea. In the best of times, life has the Yam Suf model, the splitting of the sea model. Obstacles seem at first to impede our path, but really things clear away to allow us to move forward without impediment. Midrashim record no less than 50 events that took place, fortuitously, miraculously, however you wish to view it, that allowed the great crossing of the sea when the Jewish people crossed the Yam Suf, allowed that to take place. Some of these were Purim-like, behind-the-scenes, clothed-in-nature happenings, like, for example, Pharaoh's advisors giving him the brilliant notion to chase after the Jews. Given the 10 plagues which had just occurred, you'd think they would leave the Jews alone, but no, they pursued and they perished. The Egyptians shot a lot of arrows and missiles at the Israelites, but somehow they all missed. Those who remember the Gulf War 30 years ago remember and know what kind of miracle clothed in nature this is. Apparently, the clouds at the time rearranged themselves to keep the Bnei Yisrael in the light and the Mitzrayim in the dark. The wind that came at just the right time when Bnei Yisrael needed it had the dual effect of causing the waters to remain out of the way and also keeping the seabed dry and accessible for us to walk on. Other happenings at the time were outright supernatural. Some say the sea split into 12 different paths, one for each tribe. Others say the water was like a tent, protecting us all around. The very nature of water changed for that moment in history, and it became solid rather than liquid on either side of us as we crossed through. Midrash Rabbah records that when the children began to cry as they were crossing the Yam Suf, the walls began to produce fruit and sweetness to comfort them. Apparently, for all our accomplishments, the Jewish people by that time had not yet invented the Candyman. Midrash Shocher Tov mentions that there were many aged and infirm people among the Jews leaving Egypt, and the entire group nevertheless traveled together in a timely fashion in order to reach land by daybreak. If you've ever witnessed or been part of a tour group comprised mainly of Jews, you will recognize the miracle right there. Akedas Yitzchak and the Al-Sheikh HaKadosh both note that although splitting of the Yam Suf was clearly an open miracle, the Egyptians nonetheless followed us right into the seabed and were swallowed up by the sea closing over them. Sometimes, in their foolishness and self-destructive stupidity, our enemies, in their quest to do us harm, seem nothing short of miraculous. The open miracles and the hidden miraculous events surrounding this great moment in Jewish history echo across the centuries in our daily prayers. For from the Song of the Sea that we say every single morning of the year, in the verses of praise that are part of Shachris, the morning service, to the well-known Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Hashem that we sing as an introduction to the Amidah, remembrances of Kriyas Yam Suf, this splitting of the sea and salvation of the Jewish people, are the paradigm and the high watermark, pardon the expression, of that moment in Israel's salvation from the Egyptians. We would wish that all journeys in life are so blessed, so miraculous, so clear, and so joyous. Unfortunately, as experience teaches us, they are not. There are all too many examples where the journey forward is neither joyous nor inspiring and brings us little comfort or hope. As we make our way through life, there is the inevitable loss, grief, pain, and sadness. These take too many forms to give even a partial list, but we all have our examples of where things were, to say the least, not very miraculous. And yet, the downside of forward travel is also mentioned in our portion this week, and it comes right on the heels of the Song at the Sea. In the brief incident at Marah, we learn a great insight about how we make it through dark times, just as we're buoyed through the good times. It's captured in one verse at the end of Revi'i, the uplifting and soaring Aliyah number 4, that's so moving we all stand as a congregation to hear it read, one of the 2 times in the year when we do this, the other being the giving of the Torah at Sinai, which we'll re-experience in next week's Sedra. Imagine this scene. The sea has just split and allowed the Jewish people to pass through. We came through miraculously safe and even dry shod. The Egyptians and their pharaoh drowned in the torrential waters of the sea closing behind us. The Bnei Yisrael, led by Moshe Rabbeinu, have just burst into a beautiful song of thanksgiving, the Shira Sayam, song at the sea. Miriam has just led the women in singing a special song of appreciation. Then, without interruption of even a pause in Aliyah breaks, the following happens. Moshe led us away from the Yam Suf, and we did not find good drinking water right away. Verse 22. And the operative verse 23, Vayavo marasa v'lo yachlu lishtos mayim mimara. They came to Mara, and they could not drink the waters of Mara. Why? Ki marim hem, because they were bitter. Al kain kara shema Mara. Therefore they called its name Mara. From time to time we point out problems, issues in translation. We have to be aware that although we're hearing the Torah being read in the original holy tongue, Hebrew, even those of us who are native speakers risk from time to time missing some of the nuance. How much more so if we're speakers of English as our first language. To capture the essence of this verse, it has to be translated as Art Scroll does, credit where credit's due. They say, they could not drink the waters, for they were bitter. Mayim, as you know, is the Hebrew word for water, and it's a plural noun. We use the collective water in English, which refers either to one drop of water on my fingertip or all the water in the ocean. Mayim, in the Hebrew plural, requires plural pronouns and adjectives. So to capture that in English, we have to say waters, and we have to say they were bitter. That results in a dazzling ambiguity, which I first heard from my friend Rabbi Shudrich in Poland. It's reported in the name of the Baal Shem Tov. They could not drink the waters because they were bitter. Who exactly was bitter? Was the water bitter? Or were the Jews so bitter that they could not even enjoy the water that they found in time to slake their thirst? At Mara, the place where this took place, we received a few halachas so that we would have something to study. Rashi explains, quoting a Gemara in Sanhedrin and a Mechilta, a Midrash. Apparently, this included the laws of Shabbat, the Para Aduma, and the structure and function of the Beis Din, the court of law. Number of the Mefarshim, Ramban, Nachmanides among them, explained that the model of Torah sweetening life and making it meaningful is paralleled by Moshe tossing a stick into the bitter waters to make them sweet. Moshe took a branch from a tree to suggest Eitz Chaim, the tree of life, which is Torah. When life is not manageable, the ingredient you might be missing is Torah, this parallel seems to be saying. This shows that the world works the way its creator and master wants, not necessarily always the way we think it runs or should run. Chassam Sofer says quite clearly that not everything we think is a natural phenomenon can be explained in rational, natural terms. The branch that sweetened the water, some say, was an oleander tree. Targum Yonason calls it hardafuni, which itself is a bitter thing. A bitter thing added to another bitter thing, the bitter waters, makes it sweet. How does that work? Not according to logic, certainly. That's why God says in the subsequent verse, I will teach you, rather than I will show you. Not I will teach you how it works. I will simply teach you that it works. In other words, learn to make use of things that help the situation without thinking that everything has to be filtered through your rational mind before you're allowed to use it. And here we come to the great lesson taught to us by the incident of bitterness at Mara, and reinforced and restated and represented by the sages throughout the ages, emphasized by the thinkers and leaders of our times who inspire us. Rabbi Sachs cites Dr. Viktor Frankl at the beginning of his book, The Great Partnership. Dr. Frankl, who was in 4 different concentration camps in 3 years during the Shoah, maintained in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, that we always have a choice, no matter what circumstances we're in. Sometimes the only choice we have is what frame of mind we will be in when we encounter whatever is happening to us. But even that itself is still a choice. To find meaning, to find purpose, and to find even a modicum of satisfaction in one's life, even in a concentration camp like Dr. Frankl was, means to reject bitterness and futility and to choose life, sometimes even in the face of and in the very shadow of death. The recorded death toll worldwide due to COVID-19 now is approaching 6 million, and of course that number probably greatly understates the actual figure, which, to our sadness, to our sorrow, continues to mount. A once-in-a-100-year pandemic, please God, an event like this will remain so rare, with so much stress and so much anxiety and loneliness and disruption to life, could be a perfect storm for depression and sadness, despair if we let it. Thankfully, we are not letting it be that. We are recognizing that the path forward is often, as we said at the outset, fraught with danger, with hazards, even threats to our physical well-being. This Beshallach Shira, we sing the song of a grateful and praiseful Jewish people, happy to have survived this far, happy to have been rescued, happy to have been delivered. We know that God goes with us wherever we go, and our calling is to make the most of the situation we're in. If it's by Zoom, let it be Zoom. If it's by phone, let it be by phone. If we have to daven at home, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, by ourselves, so let it be a meaningful, heartfelt, sincere davening, as many people made it for themselves last year and the year before. As Dr. Frankl would counsel us, we always have a choice. The option of despair and bitterness and hopelessness is always there, but we reject it. Instead, we lift ourselves up, we lift each other up. In song, on Beshallach Shira, but every Shabbos and every weekday also, even if it's just one person singing alone, sitting at home singing to yourself, that's still a Shira. That's still a song. And with that song in our hearts and on our lips, we banish bitterness. We turn away from misery. We choose hope and meaning and faith, and we make every day, every moment into something meaningful and holy. We always have a choice. And at the end of the Torah each year, we hear our calling and our national mission. Uvacharta v'chayim. You should choose life. Laman tichya ata v'zarecha. You and your generations to come. As we choose it, so should it choose us. And may the path always open clearly and invitingly and safely before us in good health and joy and song. L'chaim. Good Shabbos.